My mother was one of 6 children.
What was her name?
Caroline Cavalier. And her father was the glass blower. And they traveled a lot. So she never really stayed in one school at a time. So she had to learn different languages, because even dialects. So she was poorly educated because she never stayed in one school for her entire school life.
And where was she from?
And she was born in the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And when did she come to the United
And
States?
she came to the United States, I guess it was in the early 1900s. And she came here and she was a parlor maid for Governor Lehman
Wow.
at the time. So see, these people, she didn't speak any English. So a parlor maid had duties to do. They didn't have to know the language. They were just told what to do.
So they actually moved the business, the whole family came over, they moved the
No,
business glass. She came out
no,
solo.
no, she came out by herself.
So then how did all the glass blowers come to the United
They
States?
came later.
Her
Her
brothers? her
came
fa-
later.
okay.
After she was settled here, she sent for them and her mother, because her father fought in the First World War. No, he was in some war and he got tuberculosis and he died.
Okay.
So she came, and then she sent for her mother and her brothers.
And where was she living at this time in New York City?
She was living in Manhattan.
In Manhattan.
In Manhattan.
Do you know
somewhere.
where in Manhattan?
Not way
lower.
down, lower east side.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Do you know how her and Frank met?
How did she meet him? I don't know how she even met him. I really don't know how she met him.
But they were young.
Well, not that young,
Mm-hmm.
because my father was 38 when he married my mother,
Okay.
and my mother was 9 years younger than he was.
So she was still a parlor maid when
She
they
was
met.
When they met.
And he was, what was he doing?
He was a cabinet maker.
He was a cabinet maker.
Yeah.
In the Bronx?
No, in Manhattan.
In Manhattan as well?
In Manhattan.
It's interesting. They both came over by themselves
Right.
from their respective countries.
Mm-hmm. And then see, she sent for her mother and her brothers.
And did they move in with
They moved in with my mother and father. By that time, they were married, so they moved in with them for a short while, and then they got settled in, and then they opened up a glass business
In Manhattan?
in Long Island City. Yeah, but they didn't have much glass blowing. They had like pressed glass pieces that they made trees out of.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very popular. They did very well. They sent most of these to South America and Mexico because those people really liked them.
And did your mother do any glass blowing?
No,
No.
she didn't do any glass blowing. Only the men did the glass
Her
blowing.
brothers. Did you meet her brothers?
Oh yeah, they were here. My Uncle Charlie and my Uncle Jerry, Yaroslav and Karel. yeah. They were here. And they married, my Uncle Charlie married a woman that lived in Binghamton, New York. And she came here when she was 3 years old. And she was very uppity.
Also Czech?
Yeah, Czech,
All Czech.
yeah. And then my Uncle Yaroslav, which was the older one, he married a woman that came from Czechia. And they have one daughter, my cousin Geraldine.
Oh, yeah.
Did
And
they,
she went back to live, and she lives in Czechia now. She married her cousin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
good old days.
good old days, yeah.
Did they move that factory out of Long Island City?
No, that always stayed there. That
Still there.
stayed there. Yeah.
What's the
I
name?
don't think it's there anymore.
What was the
The
name of
building's
the company?
probably there.
What's the name of the company?
Cavalier Brothers.
That's with a K, correct?
Yeah, K with the Cavaliers. Yeah, not a C. My grandmother came here, and then she went back, and then she came. She and my mother both had a problem. They suffered from depression.
Mm-hmm.
They used to call that a nervous breakdown, but it was actually depression.
What were their
And
names?
What were their names?
Your grandmother's name, what was her name?
What was her
What did you call her?
name? Babichka.
Papichka.
Yeah, Babichka. A very cool person. I don't think she ever hugged me or gave me a kiss.
Mm.
Very cool. She liked her youngest son, Karel. See, and his family was everything. The rest, and my father didn't get along. They didn't like one another.
That was a tough one, huh?
That it
He was a
was
tough guy. Was he an anarchist?
They just didn't get along.
Well, they lived together for a while, right? Like when they came over from the Ukraine?
When she went, well, yeah, but not very long. Then they got their own places
Okay.
and they married and so on, yeah.
Hmm. And what about her husband, your grandfather? Do you remember him?
Oh, he died. See, he never came.
So he
here.
never came over
He
from
never
the
came
Ukraine?
over because he died.
Tuberculosis.
Yeah, that he got, during the war.
Hmm.
6 children. So there were 3 girls and then 3 boys. And they all came here except her oldest brother. And he stayed in Checo and he married a French woman.
Oh.
And he had 4 sons. So I still have cousins over there.
Have you when you went over there? Did you meet them?
I met one of them. And the one that I met passed away already
So when did you go over to the Czech Republic for the first time?
in 1964.
You went with Grandpa?
Hmm.
And
Well,
what was
we
your
took a long trip.
experience?
Oh, well, it was Prague at that time was under the influence of the Russians, so the Czech people let the whole city go to pot.
Right.
But then after they won their independence from Russia, then they fixed, and Prague is one of the most beautiful cities in Europe now.
Who did you meet when you went over there?
I just met the one cousin, and then my other cousin who was living there, who was born here.
So you were in Prague mostly.
No, we were in Brno too, which is where my cousin still lives.
70.
So Bobby is
so-
the mother, the one we hear about all the time is
Okay.
Bobby.
So Detta remarried.
Yeah, Daddy remarried
How old were you when your mother passed away?
in my 30s.
In your 30s.
Yeah, she had cancer.
And then
And then
Detta,
he remarried
you remarried Rose.
Rose.
What year did he remarry? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember.
Do you remember how old you were?
I was in my 30s. It
Mhm.
was soon after. And he brought her here and from Checo. And they still lived on Hollywood Avenue in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
But she was the lady of leisure. She loved to shop. He did all the cooking.
Was he a good
Most
cook?
of the cleaning. He was a good cook.
Real good
Dada
cook.
was a very good cook. Well, see, he learned to cook because my mother was ill so long. So he had to cook.
Do you think
And
he taught
I learned
himself?
to cook. Pardon me?
Did he teach himself?
Yeah. He remembered the foods that he liked. Yeah. And he was a traveling salesman, Dada.
No.
Yeah.
What did he sell?
Well, first he started off in this country as a cabinet maker. And he lost the very good job he had because one of the men that worked under him left a cigarette burning in a place where they were working, and the room caught on fire. So the woman who hired him apologized to him. She said, "I know it wasn't your fault, Frank. It was carelessness on somebody else's part, but she said, I can't hire you any longer." So he lost his job then, and this was during the Depression. So he didn't know what he was going to do. That's when he got into the pickle business.
Tell us about the pickle business. I've heard about this pickle business. Tell me about the pickle business.
Pickle business.
Yeah.
Well, he worked for Block and Guggenheimer.
B&G.
As he was a salesman.
B&G, what we know as B&G now?
Yeah, B&G.
Really?
Yeah, they were way back then. And so he went, and he was a salesman, and he went from the butcher stores used to carry sauerkraut, and he went from store to store, and he sold their products.
How long did he work there for?
A long time.
Really?
He worked for them a long time until he retired, and then he got a job in a liquor store as a salesman
Near Hollywood Boulevard?
near
Hollywood?
Tremont Avenue in the
Tremont.
Bronx.
And how long did you do that?
Did that for a long time. And then that's when he came down here, you know, to live with me,
Right.
when he was 92.
So I remember something about a button factory. Is that?
Oh, that's when he
Also-
first came to this country. He used to sew buttons on cards because it was a Czech family who had this business, and he could speak Czech to them. So we saw, and for 50 cents a day. They were gangsters. He had this was doing the speakeasies. He had a restaurant and a bar. And they were looking for, what do they call that money, you know,
Laundered money?
when they want protection money,
Right.
protection money, and he wouldn't pay them. So that's where they had threatened to blow up his car, but they never did. They never did. And when he had that business, people used to buy their beer, mainly beer, but you had to give them a free lunch. So Deda always made his free lunches very peppery, so that they would be thirsty and drink a lot of beer.
A lot of pickles too.
Yeah.
Did you eat a lot of pickles growing up?
No.
Sauerkraut?
No. But I went to a sauerkraut factory, which was in Albany, New York, because that's where they grew all the cabbages. And they had these huge cauldrons, I mean, as big as this room and higher. And when you looked down, you saw all the shredded cabbage. And the men, I always remember that because they had boots on, and they were walking, tamping this down, you know, and getting it ready to make sauerkraut.
I wanted to find out about your memories as a child in New York City and what it was like, you know.
Well, actually, we didn't live in the city that long. I was born there, and then we moved to Little Neck, Long Island, because my uncle and aunt lived there. They had a house, and he had tuberculosis. And at that time, when you had tuberculosis, they liked to get you up in the mountains and have you sleep out on these porches, so you got all this mountain fresh air. So we rented their house in Little Neck. And that's where I first went to school. But I went to kindergarten, and I didn't speak a word of English. But by the time I was finished in kindergarten, I was fluent in first grade.
So everyone in your family was speaking Czech.
Czech, right.
How was their English at that time?
My father's English was good. My mother's was never that good. I mean, he was really a self-taught person. He read the New York Times every day. He went in the stock market. You know, he was very well
Did
spoken.
you take trips into Manhattan as a child, and do you remember going to see, I don't know, the Empire State Building, or going to the Statue of Liberty, or doing any of those kinds of things?
Well, not really. We didn't go into the city that much. But I did work in Macy's for a while. R.H. Macy and Company.
Tell us about that.
Well, I started there. First I started in an insurance company, and I didn't like it. It was boring. So I preferred working as a salesperson. So I got into Macy's and I sold vitamins.
What kind of vitamins?
All kinds of vitamins. Whatever they were selling, I sold vitamins.
Is that how you got into vitamins?
Yes, vitamins. And then at that time, let's see, when was that? That was after I graduated from high school. And then I got married, and I worked up in Arnold Constables in New Rochelle.
What's our constables?
That was a store. That was a department store. It's no longer in business.
And what did you do there?
I was a salesperson in the cosmetic and perfume department.